everyone, my name is Irene and welcome to Theo and Olaf. Today we're continuing on our series on everything about pet food. If you missed our last videos, we talked about the shocking truth about the pet food industry and all the benefits of the raw diet. If you want to catch those videos, you can see them linked in our description below. Today we're going to talk about how exactly to transition your pet onto the raw diet. If you like this content, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell for notifications. As a reminder, I am not a veterinarian, so please consult your vet for any specific dietary needs your pet has. And now let's get on to today's content. Transitioning your pet onto the raw diet. This is a process that requires a lot of patience because it's not a process that happens overnight. For dogs, this can take a few days to 2 weeks. For cats, this can take 1 to 3 weeks for this to happen. The amount of time really depends on your pet's age, weight, and activity level. So let's go over how this transition process looks like for a dog first. Your dog probably eats mostly kibble, and some dogs eat a combination of kibble and wet food. But the idea is that you would introduce a small amount of raw food, about 25% of their meal, every couple days. So the first few days, it's 25% raw food. The next few days, 50% raw food, etc. Eventually, you want to get the dog eating raw exclusively, 100%. Okay, now let's talk about the transition process for cats. It's actually very similar to what I talked about before, but you want to do this gradually and introduce an even smaller amount of wet food, about 5 to 10% of the meal to start. Your cat, though, might have an easier transition if you go from feeding them kibble to exclusively wet food to exclusively raw food. So why this intermediate step of feeding them exclusively wet food? Well, it's pretty crucial if your cat is primarily eating dry food. You want to get your cat used to the texture, moisture content, and the flavor of non-dry food. So you introduce a small amount of wet food into their dry food, and every day while there are no issues with your cat's digestion, increase the portion of wet food. The goal is to get them completely off the kibble. This is hard though because kibble is actually quite addicting for cats. Once your cat is exclusively on wet food, you'll then begin the process of introducing raw food slowly until they're eating raw food exclusively at 100%. So here are my recommendations for ensuring a successful transition onto the raw diet. 1, find the right type of bowl. When it comes to feeding raw food, you want to avoid using a plastic bowl. The reason is because plastic can absorb bacteria from the raw food and cause chin acne. If you do use plastic, however, be sure to wash it often. In total transparency, we still use a plastic bowl when it comes to feeding Theo, but we of course make sure to wash it after every meal. The recommendation when it comes to feeding raw food is to use a stainless steel or ceramic bowl. 2, elevate the bowl. Elevating the bowl prevents fast eating and indigestion, and it also ensures that they don't have to hunch over to eat their food. 3, scheduled meal times. This means no more free feeding or grazing on food whenever. After your pet is done eating, you want to take the food away. This is because raw food can go bad if it sits out for too long. But you also want your pet to get into the mindset that food is only served at dedicated times and they should eat as much as possible during those times. So here are some common issues that people run into when introducing raw food to their pet for the first time. 1, your pet just doesn't want to eat any of the raw food or just doesn't like it. What I would recommend for this is to warm up the raw food just a tiny bit in the microwave. This way your pet can smell the raw food a little bit better and may be more enticed to eat it. Also, if your pet misses the crunch that comes from dry food, you can introduce some freeze-dried raw treats as a healthy supplemental snack. 2, your pet starts vomiting. This may not be too surprising, especially if the raw diet is very new to them. I wouldn't say this is a cause for concern unless the vomiting happens pretty consistently, in which case you should probably consult your vet. If this happens though, I would recommend a slower introduction and warming up the raw food a tiny bit, as I suggested before. So that's it when it comes to the transition process onto the raw diet. And this concludes our series on everything about pet food. If you've transitioned your pet onto the raw diet or in the middle of it, please share your experience in the comment section below. Until next time, take care.